Hello, welcome to the Quicksilver Adventuring League. Today I'm going to go ahead and just do an update to one of my prior videos where I did the changes to the 2024 Druid from the 2014. I wanted to go ahead and add the subclasses to the video, and I'm going to actually just put them at the end after the level 20 ability for the Druid. But yeah, just feel free to skip ahead if you've already seen the other one. But if you like the content, please hit subscribe and like this video. And I'm going to keep putting out more, but that way you get notified when I do. Regarding Druid class features, now they call core traits. Not a lot has changed, but some has. You still have wisdom and intelligence as your primary stats, wisdom mainly, and then your proficiency stats are the wisdom and intelligence. And you're still a D8 for hit points. And then when it comes to the weapons used, there was a list in 2014, but now it just says simple weapons in 2024. So they streamlined that. And then the armor you use, it did say light and medium, but they would not use anything metal. And now it's just light armor. But later on, you can actually choose a warden ability, and actually then you gain proficiency in medium armors. But it doesn't have the won't wear metal limitation. Next is the Druid features table, and nothing's really changed here. They've just added a column for prepared spells and wild shapes. Next is Druidic. It's still, the work functions the same. It's still the secret language of the Druids. You can leave hidden messages that only other Druids would be able to read. Now, one thing that is different is now you have speak with animals prepared at all times. So you do have to use a spell slot to use it, but you always do have that. And I do like this additional flair for the Druid, where no matter what you've chosen for your spell list, this is always ready to go and it doesn't negatively impact your prepared spells. So at any moment, you can talk to any animal you want. One thing that did change about spell casting is your prepared spells. Now they just have a list on the Druid features chart. But before, it was your wisdom modifier plus your Druid level. It was the number of spells you could have prepared every day. And I actually like the 2014 version better, where it actually is dependent upon how your primary stat is. So the higher the wisdom, the more spells you have. And I liked rewarding characters that actually had that higher stat in that way, but they took that away. Next is actually a new one called Primal Order. And you actually have two paths you can follow, the Warden or the Magician. And so the Warden actually gives you actual proficiency in martial weapons and medium armor. So it actually gives you more of a martial path for the Druid to follow instead of a caster focused. And then the Magician side actually gives you an extra cantrip to work with. And one thing that I really like that they've added is you now get to add your wisdom modifier to your intelligence, arcana, and nature checks. Actually, I think makes a lot of sense for a druid, but now it's actually there. Next is actually wild shape, and they've actually made some significant changes to this. And some I'm a fan of, some I'm not so much of a fan of, but I'll go ahead and go over the changes now. And so first off, is that they've actually moved the wild shape to a bonus action for all druids instead of just circle the moon. So, okay, nice little boost for the druids as a whole. And then after that, they've actually increased the number of wild shapes as you go up in level. So you had two until you reached a very high level, but now at level 6 you get 3, and then at level 17 you get 4 per day. Next on the wild shape front is known forms. And before, you actually just anything that you've seen, you can actually shapeshift into. So like if you grew up in a forest, you'd probably have all of the animals that would be natural to that forest in your repertoire. But now you start off and you have 4, and then as you level up, it goes up to 6, and then it goes up to 8 that you know. And those actually function in the way, like you get to pick, like at level 1, you have 4. So you get to pick, whatever animals you want for those 4. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can swap out one of the forms with something else. And I don't know, this section kind of really bothers me, simply the fact that before it was anything you knew, and now it's limited to this. And then for me to be able to swap into something else, I have to sleep on it. I don't know. The mechanics bother me. I remember in the Unearthed Arcana when they actually had they were suggesting for this new edition that they do stat blocks, where they have like a land, a sea, and an aerial creature stat block. And then you can change into whatever you want and then just gain that stat block. I like that idea for new players. And so people getting used to the game, because keeping a big library of stat blocks for creatures, it might be a little overwhelming for some new people. But the experienced player is going to, be more comfortable with it. And then they can actually keep the stat blocks on hand, and nowadays you can pull it up on your phone so fast. What does it matter? But I actually would like to see it, like if you grew up in an Arctic or grasslands or forest, you name it, then I would have it where that druid knows that creature type for that zone, but then keep a list of creatures that they've run across as they enter new zones and new areas and run across new beasts. And then that way the druid is growing and it's kind of a role-playing piece. And you could even quest to go find an obscure beast that you want to change into. I mean, there's lots of options for that. And I actually prefer that style of play and would like to keep that in the game. After all that, I do want to call out that I haven't tried it yet, so I'm going to try to keep an open mind and give it a shot. But my gut says this is getting homebrewed. Another change they've made to Wild Shape is that now you can speak in beast form. So now you can actually speak to the party and anyone you want to. I actually kind of like the role-playing flair of not being able to speak to the party, but I mean, you still can. You can pretend you can't, but they gave you the option to be able to speak in whatever animal form you've chosen. But all right. The next change is the hit point pool when you actually do your wild shape, because before you took on the hit points of the creature you've changed into, and then if you take that much damage, let's say you have one hit point as a bird, you take 1 point, you're knocked out of form, and you're back to your druid in your normal health. Or if you changed into something much larger with, let's say, 40 hit points, then now you have that pool, and then if you lose those 40, you're knocked out of shape. So now you just gain temporary hit points equal to your level. So if you're a level 10 druid and you have 70 hit points, then now you are a 80 hit point crow. So now if you take more than the one that the bird would have, you're not knocked out of form. You're now at 79 instead of 80, and you can actually use your entire hit point pool as a druid and stay in form, which I actually like this change. If you're low on health as a druid, you're not going to have like a quick hit point boost other than your level. Like if you were to change into a 40 hit point beast and you're low on health as a druid, like let's say at 5, and then you're getting attacked and then you wild shape into something to give yourself a little hit point boost, you don't have that anymore. But I do like the fact that the low hit point creatures, you're just knocked out of form. They like that quick. Won't happen anymore. Nothing else has changed. You're still going to have your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma if you whatever form you change into, but you gain the physical statistics of whatever you have changed into. And then if you change into something that does, like a dog that does not have an opposable thumb, you're going to have limitations to what objects you can pick up. So the rest of the wild shape has remained the same. Next is a new one that was actually in an Unearthed Arcana a while back, where you can actually use one of your wild shapes to gain a small companion. It's basically a find familiar, but you get to use that one wild shape, and then you gain this little creature that's a face spirit, and you get to pick what it looks like. But yeah, you can use it and treat it like a familiar. Next to level 3 are the subclasses, and I'm going to actually not talk about them here. I'm going to add them to the end of the video, and I'll put timestamps here and in the description. So if you want to jump ahead to the subclasses or come back to the video and just go straight to it, you'll have the option to do that. But yeah, I'll put it all at the end of the video after I get through level 20 for the core druid. Next to level 4 is the ability score improvement. And I've said that in all my videos so far for classes, but I don't know why they just didn't call this level 4 feat, because it even says in the verbiage that it's an ability score improvement feat. Then you go to that, it's repeatable, so you can keep using it just like you could before, or you can gain a feat. So I don't know, I just would have called it feat, but for a reason they didn't. Next level 5 is Wild Resurgence, and I actually really like this one. You can actually take a wild shape use and turn it into a level 1 spell slot once per long rest, or you can take a spell slot and turn it into a wild shape use. So I actually found it very limiting in the 2014 book that where you actually only had 2 wild shapes, even though you got the extra time. You still only had the 2 wild shapes for such a long period of time in terms of leveling. But now you actually have options to go beyond the 2, not just, at higher levels, you get the 3 and the 4, but now you have the option to change spell slots into wild shapes. So you get more wild shapes, but cast less. And yeah, I just really like this addition. Next is Elemental Fury. And this is where you actually get to pick one of 2 options for your druid moving forward. And so you either have potent spell casting or primal strike. And with potent spellcasting, you actually have improved cantrips in the sense that you actually get to add your wisdom modifier to any damage done with your cantrip. Then with primal strikes, you actually get to add a d8 damage to your attacks in beast form for fire, cold, lightning, or thunder. And you get to pick. Next to level 15 is improved elemental fury. And so now your cantrips, instead of having a 10-foot range, they can now have a 300-foot range, which I kind of think is a little ridiculous, but hey, you've got a 300-foot range. And then with primal strike, you actually get a 2d8 instead of 1d8. I personally wish with both Elemental Fury and Improved Elemental Fury, the spellcasting portion had not been cantrip focused, but is what it is. Next to level 18 was Timeless Body, which had actually been removed from level 18. And so for every 10 years that passed, you actually only aged 1 year. Also at level 18 is Beast Spells, which is still here, but there is a slight change. So in wild shape form, you could cast beast spells that required verbal, somatic only, but you could not provide a material component. Now in 2024, it's the same, except for material components that either have a cost or are consumed. So you can cast anything else that requires a material component that does not fit into those two categories. Next to level 19 is just like every other class, you get an epic boon, which was before above level 20 play, you actually gained extra boons or had the option to. But now it's actually an option to choose at level 19 for your class. Next is Archdruid, which has changed quite a bit. In 2014, you could actually wild shape an unlimited number of times a day. In addition, you could actually ignore the verbal and somatic components of your spells. And also, if it had no cost and was not consumed, then you could also ignore the material components. And that was the case in both wild shape and your normal druid form, but that's gone. Now in the 2024 Archdruid, you actually have, they call it evergreen wild shape, where if you roll initiative and you have no uses left, you regain one use of wild shape. Also, the slow aging is back. It's called longevity. And so every 10 years that pass, you age 1 year. So instead of being at level 18, now it's back at level 20. And the last piece of Archdruid is Natural Magician. And this is where you can actually take unused wild shapes and convert them into spell slots. So each wild shape use is equal to a level 2 spell slot. So if you use 2 wild shapes, you can get a level 4 spell slot. If you use 3 wild shapes, you get a level 6 and so on. Now let's talk about the subclasses. And in the new 2024 book, there are 4. And so there's the Circle of the Land, Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Sea, and Circle of the Stars. And not all of them are actually from the 2014 Player's Handbook. And Circle of the Sea is actually new, but I'll go ahead and go into those now. I'm going to start with the Circle of the Land. And actually right here it was level 2, but now level 3. It feels like they did a little subtraction and a little addition. So like in 2014, you actually got a bonus cantrip, and that has been completely removed. Then you had Natural Recovery, which allowed you to regain some spell slots during a short rest. Next is a new ability actually called Land's Aid. And you can use a wild shape to, within a 10-foot radius sphere, you can have either damaging thorns or healing plants grow, and you can actually heal one creature within that sphere for 2d6, and then or you can also damage a number of creatures of your choice for that same 2d6. And then as you go up in level, it increases in d6, like 3d6 and so on. Then the last thing at level 3 is the Circle of Land spells, which this, I don't know, I kind of like the 2014 version of this better, but it had 8 different land types in the 2014, and now it's reduced to 4. And before it was a link to the area where you became a druid. So like where you grew up and started learning to become a druid, and you had an affinity for that land type, which makes more sense to me, but I actually like that role-playing feel for this. But now you can actually take one of the 4 types and change them out per long rest. So it gives more versatility, but I don't know. It just kind of bothers me that I actually like the role playing flair of the 2014, where it was affinity for where you grew up and where you were trained. Now you can change the land spells that you have an affinity with just simply a rest on it, a long rest. Weird. In 2014, I also really like the fact that they had like an Underdark option, mountain. I think they should have stuck to the 8 different categories instead of trying to condense it down into 4. I mean, I don't see how that would have been really a problem, but They still did it. Natural recovery, they actually moved from level 2 and moved it up to level 6. So you still have the ability, it just takes you a little longer to get there. And then in addition to the recovering spell slots, you can actually cast one of your circle spells without expending a spell slot once per long rest. One thing they did get rid of is land stride. So you were able to move through non-magical terrain as if it weren't difficult, but now you can't. I actually kind of like this. It kind of made for me, it was a feel for Circle of the Land where you're actually more in tune with the land. And it made sense for me that the druid would actually have it, but I got rid of it. Next is Nature's Ward, and they did make a slight tweak to this one. In 2014, you could not be charmed or frightened by Fae, and you're also immune to poison and disease. But then in the new 2024, that you're still immune to poison, but they, of course, you don't need diseased any longer since the entire condition's gone. But instead of having the charmed or frightened resistance to Fae, now you actually have resistance to damage type, depending on what type of land choice you chose for the day with the Circle Spells feature. Next is Nature Sanctuary. And I actually really like the 2014 version of this where natural beasts and plants were hesitant to attack you. But it never really felt like a level 14 warranted ability, but I probably would have put it more in the level 6 or the level 2 version. But I always felt that this actually fit into the Circle of the Land and liked it in here, even though I didn't quite feel it was worthy of a level 14. Now in 2024, Nature's Sanctuary is quite different. It actually summons spectral trees and vines and such in a certain area, and it gives your party half cover while in the area, and you actually have the ability to move it. And so the party also gains the same resistance you have based on the land type you've chosen for the day. So it actually allows them half cover and some actual resistance to whatever may be attacking them at the time. Next is Circle of the Moon. And this is actually the one that bothers me the most because this was my favorite circle and favorite class to play in 2014. And the new Circle of the Moon feels just like that, a new circle. And other than the fact that you still have the challenge rating boost from the other circle in 2014, it really just feels like something new. And I think the game should retain both and probably just rename the 2014 to something else. I'll go ahead and go into the details for the new one. The circle forms is still here, but it's changed. Before you could actually, until level 6, you actually could ignore the CR rating, the max CR rating of the beast that you transform into, and it could go as high as 1. Then at level 6, it starts dividing the druid level by 3. So a level 6 could go as high as 2 for the challenge rating, and so on as you gain levels. And that is still present in the 2024, but they've kind of condensed the verbiage to where now it's just your druid level divided by 3 rounded down. So it'll start at a 1 at level 3 and continue on up. So they got rid of the level 6 change. So it's just made the verbiage a little more streamlined. But now they've actually added to the armor class. So you actually get to pick the better of the two. So you have the beast armor class, or you have a base 13 plus your wisdom modifier. So that's nice. You get to pick that, which I actually think that probably should have been included in the 2014. But in the 2014, they actually also got rid of the ability to change as a bonus action, which is now available to all druids. And then also you gain temporary hit points equal to your druid level times 3. So that's definitely helpful. And I actually would take like that aspect because they got rid of the bonus action benefit from the 2014. I would take those 2 extra, the armor class and the temporary hit points, and move that to the circle of change in the for the new 2024 version of what I envision the 2014 should be. Also in 2014 at level 2 was combat wild shape. And this one they got rid of. That's the bonus action's now been folded into the druid as a whole. So you have that still. But then also you had the ability to heal yourself with spell slots, and they've removed that completely. I'm actually okay with them removing this section where you can actually heal yourself, simply because now that the druid can actually shapeshift and not gain, like, for example, if you shapeshift into a 1 hit point bird and you take 1 hit point, you're knocked out of form, which that's no longer the case. So you don't necessarily need to heal yourself as often. Now they've added at level 3 Circle of the Moon spells, which is just like many other classes, a short list of spells that are always prepared, and you gain new ones as you go up in level based on the list. And there's some new spells to the actual book completely to get in this one, which are some moonlight focused ones. And so I'm okay with the addition. It's just, again, this just feels like a completely new circle. One thing about this list of spells is they've actually allowed you to be able to cast it within wild shape form. So since Cure Wounds is on there, you actually still have the ability to heal yourself while you're in form, but you also have some extra spell options as well. So that makes up for the loss of that ability at level 2. Next at level 6, they've actually removed Primal Strikes, which was the ability to treat your wild-shaped attacks as magical, so overcoming resistances to like slashing, bludgeoning, piercing damage. So like cat with claws, dog with teeth, you name it. It was considered magical for overcoming those resistances, but that's gone. Now at level 6, they've added improved circle forms, which so now you can actually treat your attack as normal, or it can dish out radiant damage, which is fine because that can also overcome that same thing unless you're fighting something that is resistant or immune to radiant damage and also resistant to non-magical attacks. So it limits it to a very small degree. I mean, that type of creature you're going to be fighting is going to be very rare, but it's still not as useful as it was prior. The other aspect of the level 6 is increased toughness, where you can actually add your wisdom modifier to your constitution saving throws. That's actually very useful for like concentration saves. Next to level 10 is a significant change as well, where it had elemental wild shape, where you could actually spend 2 wild shape charges and then transform into an earth, air, fire, or water elemental. But now they've moved on and they've actually changed it to Moonlight Step, where you can actually teleport up to 30 feet a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. And when you reappear, you have advantage on your next attack roll. You can regain all of these uses with a long rest, or you can actually spend a level 2 spell slot to regain a use. Next to level 14 was the ability Thousand Forms, where you could actually cast the Alter Self spell at will. I actually really like this one because of the versatility of it. It's not only where you can create claws for combat and such, but you can also use it for non-combat related things like infiltration. You can grow gills to swim through a lake, go explore the bottom without actually having to cast anything else. And you can make these changes at will throughout the day, but it's gone. Then also at level 14 now in 2024, you have Lunar Forms, which I actually think fits well into the feel for the new circle. So once per turn with an attack, you can deal an extra 2d10 radiant damage. Then you also have what's called Shared Moonlight, where you can actually use that teleportation ability to take a willing creature with you within 10 feet of you. And when you teleport, they come with you and reappear within 10 feet of you. I know the game says it is backwards compatible, but since they kept the name, I'm actually going to rename the 2014 to Circle of Change. All of the abilities in the original Circle of the Moon revolved around change to your character, primarily around the wild shape. The level 3, where you could change into higher CR creatures, and the level 6, where you could stay within the wild shape and still have magical attacks. The level 10, where you can actually change into elementals using 2 wild shapes. And then really the level 14, where you have the alter self. I mean, that is complete change. Alter self at will, that's nothing but change. And I loved every aspect of that. I am going to actually include a version of the Circle of the Moon 2014. I'm going to call it Circle of Change, but I'll have a downloadable doc in the description. So feel free to go download that and use your heart's content. Next is a new one, Circle of the Sea, and I actually like the addition of this one. The closest thing they had was a Circle of the Land that was coastal based, but now you have a circle dedicated to the oceans themselves. I really like it. First off, you have Circle of the Sea spells, which is just like any other of the classes or subclasses that actually have prepared spells based on level. You actually have some that are focused on water, storms, there's lightning. Next is the ability Wrath of the Sea, which I actually like the sound of this one. You can use a wild shape as a bonus action to summon essentially they call it an emanation of just water. I visually find it appealing. I just see some like water swirling around your character, and it can last for up to 10 minutes. It can be in any setting, from a desert to a forest to an Arctic setting. And that water stays with you for those 10 minutes. And you can use it to attack and push a target away that's larger, smaller than you. And they either pass or fail a save. And then the number of D6s in damage is equal to your wisdom modifier. Next to level 6 is aquatic affinity. Now you actually have a swim speed equal to your speed, and the emanation from level 3 is now a 10-footer instead of a 5-footer. So you actually have a larger range for the target of your emanation. Next is Stormborn. Now you actually have a fly speed equal to your speed, and also you gain resistance to cold, lightning, and thunder damage. Keep in mind that your fly speed and the additional resistances are only there while your Wrath of the Sea is active. Next is Oceanic Gift. You can take your emanation and now you can actually use it and use that same wild shape to create it, but you can create it around a willing creature within 60 feet of you, and they actually gain your spell DC and wisdom save for its use. In addition, you can actually manifest it around that same willing creature and yourself if you use 2 wild shape uses. Next is Circle of the Stars, and this is actually not out of the 2014 Player's Handbook, but was actually found in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. First is Star Map, and this actually functions the same except for one slight change. You still have the guidance cantrip, you can still cast Guiding Bolt, but Guiding Bolt you can use a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier now, whereas before it was based on your proficiency bonus. So other than that, it's still the same. If you lose it, you can still recreate another one. Next is Starry Form, and there's no change here at all. I mean, the verbiage is almost exactly the same between the 2014 and 2024 books. So yeah, no change here. Next is Cosmic Omen. And just like the one before that, this one's almost exactly the same verbiage and everything. But there is a slight tweak to this one. Whereas in 2014, the number of uses was equal to your proficiency bonus. But now in 2024, the number of uses is equal to your wisdom modifier. Next is Twinkling Constellations. And this one has no change at all. It's pretty much the same verbiage and everything. And lastly is Full of Stars. And no change to this one either. When you enter your starry form, you become partially incorporeal and have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. The more of these videos that I do, it just definitely feels like this is more of a 5.5 edition than a new edition. It just feels like a bunch of tweaks to the classes. Thank you for watching this updated video of the changes to the 2024 Druid from the 2014. I definitely had some strong feelings on the Circle of the Moon. It still is my favorite subclass, but I'll be playing the variant that I uploaded in the description. But yeah, so if you like the channel, please hit subscribe and like this video, and see you next time.